I've killed by strangulation, I've killed by knifings, I've killed by hit and runs, shootings, robberies, hangings, every type of crime, I've done it.
It starts with a smirk, the kind that shouldn't belong to a man describing murder. The cameras roll, the reporters lean forward, and a soft Texas drawl cuts through the silence. "I killed 'em all," he says. "Every one of them." Those 5 words would echo across decades, spinning the justice system, the FBI, and the media into chaos. Because Henry Lee Lucas wasn't just confessing to one murder, he was confessing to hundreds. This is the story of the man who claimed to be America's most prolific serial killer, and how his confessions turned out to be one of the greatest courtroom mysteries in modern criminal history. The story of Henry Lee Lucas begins in the depths of poverty and violence. Born in 1936 in a small Virginia cabin, Henry's life was already a horror script written before he could read. His mother, Viola, was a violent alcoholic who forced him to watch her work as a prostitute. His father, Anderson, a double amputee who brewed moonshine for survival by the age of 10. Henry had been beaten, burned, and emotionally destroyed. His only companion, a twisted sense of detachment from pain. At 13, he dropped out of school. At 17, he stabbed a classmate in the hand with a knife. And by 23, he committed his first confirmed murder, the brutal killing of his mother in 1960. He said later, "She wanted me to move back home. I didn't want to. I just snapped." That murder sent him to prison for 15 years. When he was released in 1975, he walked into a world that would soon crown him as a monster, and later, a mystery. In 1983, Henry Lee Lucas was arrested again, this time in Texas, for the murder of a 15-year-old girl named Becky Powell and an elderly woman named Kate Rich. But what happened after that arrest would make criminal history. Inside a small Texas Ranger interrogation room, Henry began talking. And talking, and talking. Over the months that followed, he confessed to killing not 1, not 10, but over 600 people. He said he murdered hitchhikers, nurses, mothers, drifters, and children. He remembered details, locations, weapons. He described acts so brutal they made hardened detectives leave the room. He was calm, polite, cooperative, and oddly, cheerful. Reporters described him as a man talking about murder like a man recalling favorite memories. When asked why he was confessing, Lucas said simply, "I just want to clean my slate, get it all out." That line too can appear as an eerie on-screen quote with his clip. At first, the police thought they had struck investigative gold across the country. Law enforcement had boxes of unsolved murders, thousands of victims without closure. Suddenly, here was a man connecting the dots. One confession after another, the Texas Rangers began flying Henry around the U.S., giving him steak dinners, milkshakes, even access to case files. And he would remember another crime wherever he went. Detectives brought him Polaroids of crime scenes, maps, and timelines. He'd glance at them and say, "Yeah, that was me." The Rangers wrote it down, and one by one, old cases were solved. He became a celebrity inmate, a man confessing to everything from a woman's disappearance in Florida to a family murder in Washington state. But something wasn't right. Journalists began to notice inconsistencies. How could one man have traveled across the entire United States, killing hundreds of people, often hundreds of miles apart, within days of each other, with no car, no money, and no witnesses? One reporter calculated that if all of Lucas's confessions were true, he would have had to drive over 11,000 miles in just 3 weeks, non-stop. That's when the cracks began to show. In 1985, the Dallas Times-Herald published a groundbreaking article questioning the validity of Henry's confessions. It revealed that police had been feeding him information, details he couldn't possibly have known otherwise. In one case, Lucas confessed to a murder in California, but he was proven to be in Florida on the very same day, verified by a work time card. In another, he described a crime scene that didn't match police photos. Yet those cases had already been closed under his name. The media began calling it the Lucas hoax. But to law enforcement, that was an embarrassment they didn't want exposed. For years, Texas Rangers and local departments had proudly announced closure to long unsolved murders. All thanks to Lucas reopening them meant admitting failure. By now, Henry's reputation had spiraled. He had fans, letters, and even a kind of cult following. Some viewed him as evil personified. Others thought he was a tragic victim of police manipulation. In one interview, he said, "I lie a lot. I can't help it. It's like I've got two personalities. One tells the truth, the other just makes stories up." He said this with the same blank expression he used when confessing to killing hundreds. When asked if he was lying about the murders, he replied chillingly, "You want the truth or what you can believe?" That line, "You want the truth or what you can believe," is one of his most haunting recorded quotes. It can be used as a dramatic pause in your video before the transition to the courtroom sequence. Eventually, the avalanche of false confessions caught up with the justice system. Texas officials created a special task force to verify Henry's claims. Out of roughly 600 confessions, more than 550 were proven false. The man who had supposedly been America's deadliest serial killer was now looking more like a compulsive liar with a bizarre psychological need for attention, and a justice system that let him play along. But there were some murders that Henry really did commit. The most famous one, the killing of 23-year-old Orange Socks, an unidentified woman found dead near Interstate 35 in 1979. Lucas confessed to her murder, was convicted, and sentenced to death. But later, even that confession was disputed. He had described her clothing incorrectly. Her body was found hundreds of miles away from where he claimed he was. And physical evidence, fingerprints, fibers, even blood type, didn't match. Yet he sat on death row for 18 years. Then something almost unheard of happened. In 1998, Texas Governor George W. Bush, a man known for rarely granting clemency, commuted Henry Lee Lucas's death, sentenced to life in prison. Bush said, the evidence against him was not strong enough to justify execution. Think about that. A convicted murderer, saved by the governor, not because he was innocent, but because no one could tell which crimes were real and which were fiction. Henry Lee Lucas died in 2001 in a Texas prison at age 64, taking with him 1,000 confessions, hundreds of lies, and only a handful of confirmed truths. But even after his death, questions lingered. Who was Henry Lee Lucas, really? A remorseless serial killer who delighted in chaos? Or a broken man, manipulated by a system desperate for easy answers? Some psychologists who studied his case said Lucas suffered from pathological lying disorder, a condition where fantasy and reality blur. Others said he was simply lonely, that the attention, the cameras, and the kindness from detectives filled a void he'd never known as a child. Whatever the reason, his words reshaped American criminal justice forever. After his exposure, police departments nationwide became more cautious about confession-based cases. Laws were passed requiring taped interrogations. New forensic standards were introduced, all because one man's lies were taken as truth, until they weren't. Today, you can still find Henry Lee Lucas's taped confessions online. He sits calmly, hands folded, describing a murder that may have never happened. His voice is eerie, not angry, not gleeful, just casual. He says, killing someone's just like walking out that door. You don't think about it, you just do it. If you use this clip in your video, pause after it, fade the music, and let silence carry the weight of that moment. In the end, Henry Lee Lucas became more than a killer or a liar. He became a mirror. He reflected the flaws of the system that believed him, the hunger of the media that glorified him, and the darkness of a man who learned that the more he lied, the more people listened. He once said, "The only thing worse than lying is being ignored." And maybe, just maybe, that's what he feared the most. Some stories haunt us because they reveal evil, but others haunt us because they reveal us, our willingness to believe, our need for closure, our blindness to manipulation. Henry Lee Lucas didn't just fool the world. He exposed how badly the world wanted to be fooled. If this story left you questioning truth and deception, you're not alone. Subscribe to Veil Quest, where we uncover the untold, the unsettling, and the truths buried in plain sight.